What's up everybody, welcome to this video. I'm so thrilled about this episode that I had to record it 3 times. Yep, I messed up once the audio, once the video, and now it's 3rd time and it will be perfect. So another reason why I'm so thrilled for this video is because we are going to talk about one of the most important topics that there is in photography. We are going to talk about composition. So what do I mean by composition and why is it so important? A good composed image with a well-balanced composition will always pop out of one of millions bad composed images. And that's why it is so important. It will immediately attract attention to your image if it is well composed and the composition is well balanced. So you see that composing your image right is a crucial step in the workflow of photography. So today I'm going to talk about 3 methods to compose your image right and interesting. First of all, I'm going to start with a very basic concept of the rule of third, which nearly every photographer, starting at the beginners to the pros, use every day. After that, I'm going to introduce you guys to guiding lines and emphasize why are guiding lines so important and what they do to the eye of the observer. Last but not least, we're going to talk about framing and how we could create a frame around our object of interest and let it pop out even more. So you see, composition is a big topic, so let's dig into that. Starting with the rule of third. The rule of third, also known as the rule of thumb, is more like an approximation. It approximates the golden ratio, which is defined by the Fibonacci spiral. By lying over a grid onto your images, like one that you should see now, you can orientate your objects of interest in your composition to the intersections of the lines. Those intersections marks areas in the image which are highly interested to look at for your observer. So make sure that you place your object of interest around those intersections. Also, these horizontal lines will help you to align your image horizontally, which is perfect. Now, to understand a little bit more what I mean how to place an object on those intersections, we're going to look at some examples I took in the beginning of this year in Finland. And we're going to start with this first one over here. So you see, I photographed a scene in deep snow with a road sign for snowmobiles here, and I tried to get some attention on this road sign. So I placed it on the upper left intersection of the rule of third grid, and thereby get this extra attention to this road sign. Another thing that I did in this image, I composed my image in that way that I have this snowmobile path coming up from the lower horizontal line of the grid into the image, and that drags the eye right onto this road sign. And that's a feature we're going to talk about more a little bit later when it comes to guiding lines. To emphasize the effect of the rule of third even more, I want to show you a second example. Now, as you see in this composition, I placed the husky on the left side on the image. I could choose to place the husky right in the middle of the image, but then the picture would appear more boring and not as interesting as now. Now in this image I used a couple of framing techniques, which will I explain later. But now let's continue with guiding lines. We place our object of interest around an intersection following the rule of third, and now we have to make sure that the eyes of the observer will be lead to this object. And that's where guiding lines come in. So you're at a scene, you composed your image applying the rule of third, putting your object on an intersection, and now you're looking for structures in your environment that you can use to drag the eyes of the observer to that object. For that, it would be possible to use, I don't know, footsteps in snow, or branches, or streets, or trees, for example. And by that you make sure that the eyes of your viewer will cross your whole image and doing that, they will find your image more and more interesting. They literally will think that this is more interesting. They will enjoy the journey browsing over your image and just digging it in. Once again, to get to know the effects a little bit more, I prepared 2 examples which I'm going to show you now. So as you see in this image, our object of interest is of course the dog sled at the left part of the image. And I use the trail of this sled to drag the eye right onto this object. Now, what I did also is I started this trail at the lower third part of the image, because it is very interesting for our human eye to find this trail there, and then I started to drag it in to the image. And also another guiding line, which is not that obvious here, is formed by the untouched snow area on the right side here. On its own, this area would appear more boring, but in the contrast to the more structured snow, it forms this line also going right onto this sled. To give you a little bit more obvious example, I prepared also a second one here, which is my most favorite image of this year, and it is absolutely madness. This picture is nonsense, believe me. So here it is. It shows the Northern Lights after we came back from nearly a 24-hour road trip. Quite exhausting after that, but these views, you never will forget them. So what is the composition here? We have this strong leading line on the right side here, which is formed by the road guiding our eye into the picture, right to this tip of the aurora here on the right side, and then our eye can browse over the structures of the aurora and the formed spirals of it, which is so interesting. This effect is strengthened by the trees standing at the side of the road. The tree tops forming also a line into the image, and this gives the image extra depth even without a foreground in focus. So you see that you can really gain control over the eye of your observer, and that's a fact you should not forget about when taking photos. But also you should be clear about that your structure, your lines that guide the eye of your viewer through your image should be well organized and well structured. Otherwise the image will appear to be uninteresting, maybe a little bit too complex or even disturbing for your viewer. So take that with caution and always check your images and think about the composition before you take a photo. Alright, let's move on to framing. So what do we have now? We place our object on an intersection, which is interesting for the eye. We now know how to lead the eye of the viewers to this object, but it doesn't pop out as much as we would like to. Another technique we can apply is framing. And by framing I mean we can use structure that is on site to frame our image in, to create an area of interest in our image right where our object of interest sits, right there. So another technique for framing which will let your object of interest pop out is playing with your aperture and creating this blurry background and really setting this focus point on your object. Then your object kind of separates from the background and stands alone in the foreground, which makes a really interesting image. Now, like I said, we're going to take a look at the second image I showed you, which was this husky. In this image you will probably already noticed that I've chosen a small aperture, and by that creating this blurry background, and the dog is really separated from the background. Now another thing that I did in terms of framing for this image, I placed the dog between the sled here on the right hand side and a tree in the background on the left hand side, and that limits the area of interest for the viewer and even strengthens the effect of letting this object pop out even more. So you see that you can place some items in the foreground which will then give the image depth. So to conclude the three messages I've shown you today, first we talked about how we should place our object in our composition to make it more interesting by applying the rule of third. After that we discussed how to guide the eyes of the observer to this object by using guiding lines. And after that we discovered the effects of framing, that by using framing we can reduce the area in the image which is interesting and let our object of interesting pop out even more and creating an interesting experience for our observers. I hope you found this video helpful. If this is the case, please give it a thumbs up. Also, let me know which of the just presented techniques is your favorite down in the comments below. And of course, you can share your best composed images with me and all the other viewers on Instagram by using this hashtag, #MyStoryGraph. And feel free to follow me along on Instagram as well. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them. I would love to hear some feedback from you. And talking about feedback, if you have any wishes about videos I should do, then just contact me like Michael does last week. He asked about what material he should use to print his photos and what material is best suited for which photos. And that's the reason for my next week video where I'm covering how to print your photos right and why you should print your photos at the first place. So to be sure you do not miss out on this video, subscribe to my channel. If you like those kind of videos, you're welcome to subscribe as well. And I think that's it for today. See you next time.